Life with a new roommate. Human life sometimes knows how to surprise, which happened to me. When I chose the path of learning a programming language, I dreamed of big money, a huge house, a yacht with half-naked models, and it turned out that I was barely able to write a couple of programs and make a website to earn money for the first time. We have to change something, I strictly declared to myself, saved money for the first time and moved to another apartment, closer to the center. Now I am over 25 years old, and fantasies of success has not left me, having gained experience both working and life, changed the apartment and ready for new heights. Irony that they turned out to be lush breasts of my new neighbor. The move did not take much time. After all, I had a few things. I rented the apartment to an elderly woman and I only hoped for calm neighbors, so that without fights and drunken parties at night. And here I am, standing near the door. I am about to bring my suitcase inside, as suddenly the door opposite opens and the muse appears to my eyes, as if she descended from the canvas of a famous artist. Slender, long legs in short shorts, t-shirt, bare, flat tummy, which in addition was stretched, bulging breasts, about the third size. But the most important thing was not even this, and her face. A face that mixed in itself different emotions, from an innocent look to a curious, challenging caress. Deep and bright blue eyes could be seen even in complete darkness. Short, obsidian-colored hair completed this magnificent image. I wasn't lonely, but I couldn't boast about the number of partners I had, and even though I was experienced in love, this girl struck me to the core. Maybe I lacked the self-esteem to be less surprised by her, but I wasn't ugly either, as I'd been told. Still, I stared at her like a teenager who had seen a woman's body for the first time. But luckily it didn't scare the neighbor, and she took a calm, perhaps even elegant step, which I couldn't notice because I couldn't take my eyes off her face, and approached me and extended her palm forward with a slightly noticeable smile. "Are you our new neighbor? It's nice to meet you. I'm Jessica," she said, with a nightingale-like quality in her voice, and her timbre was like a hammer in my head. Not always a woman's voice matched her appearance, but here, now, there was no flaw in that image. It was as if she were something other than human. Whether I could fall in love with her like some brat, or whether it was my animal instincts, wanting to plunge back into a woman's warmth, that got the better of me. I could squeeze her hand and feel the pleasure of touching my sexy neighbor's body for a moment, but I hesitated and Jessica pulled her hand away, bending slightly to look down into my eyes. There was a look of interest in her eyes that would have made another girl run away at my behavior, but not this one. "I'm sorry, I was thinking," and what was more pathetic at that moment, my behavior or this attempt to justify myself? And yet Jessica only laughed softly, covering her mouth with her hand, and then folded her hands behind her back, smiling wider. "It's all good. You just moved, I understand. New place. Stressful. You'll like it here. I promise." Her voice had an unusual ability to soothe with its sound alone, and it made me relax. Jessica hadn't demanded more from me since I'd just moved in, and I was grateful for that. But it would be more comfortable if you wanted to introduce yourself too, don't you think? She squinted her eyes a little. She squinted her eyes slightly, biting her lower lip, waiting for me to say my name. "Yes, of course. I completely forgot." Ahem. I gathered my thoughts. Yes, she's incredibly beautiful, and I didn't think I'd meet a girl like that, especially when I was told that this house was known as... "My name is Alex. I'll try to be a good neighbor and not to be a nuisance," I said, the first thing that came to my mind to show that it wasn't some strange guy who had moved in. "Alex, I'll remember." A smirk appeared on her face as Jessica continued. "I'd be happy to fix our roommate relationship, Alex." At that moment, I thought she put some special emphasis on my name at the end, but Jessica just fluttered her eyelashes and turned around. On the one hand, it was a shame she was leaving, but on the other, the shorts were not only short, I didn't even notice, but they had a tight fabric structure, and I got an exciting view of my new neighbor's tight ass. I was ready to swear that she was doing it. I could even say, it was one of the sexiest asses I had ever seen. I was lost in Jessica again, and I would not forgive myself if I took my eyes off my neighbor's ass. She was leaving in no hurry, but she was not slowing down. With each movement of her legs, one part of her ass was more expressive than the other. Already near the door, Jessica turned her face sharply and obviously noticed that my gaze was still on her soft spot. Once again, it was nice to meet you. And then my muse disappeared behind the door, and I was left alone, with my suitcase. What was that? I asked myself, dragging my things inside, exhaling only when the door to the apartment closed. I should get my workspace ready, but first it would be good to calm down. After a calming session of manhandling, I finally settled into my new place, set up my computer, charged my laptop, and just as the kettle was boiling, to make myself a coffee. I had moved here to try my luck and get a job with a company that was just downtown. While I was drinking coffee and imagining what the tests for passing the probationary period in this company will be, I heard the doorbell, which took me out of my thoughts. I just stopped by. Who is it? Putting the cup on the table, I went to check on my guest. Experience had taught me not to open the door before looking through the peephole, and I was once again overcome with some teenage excitement. Of course, my neighbor Jessica was there. Who else would be able to distract me more than her? We met about 15 minutes ago. What does she want? While I watched her from a safe distance, Julia waited for me to open the door, swaying slightly in place. At one point, it was as if she saw me through the door and waved her hand with a pleased look. Maybe she had good intuition, or maybe it was obvious that I could have come in such a short time, but for some reason a shiver ran through my body. I didn't consider myself some kind of alpha male, and maybe that was why I was so nervous in front of her. The door opened, and the first thing that greeted me was her lullaby voice. Oh, I thought I couldn't wait. She pouted her pink lips resentfully at first, only to stretch them into a smile again. But it's normal for a young boy to stretch the pleasant process. Can I come in? It was hard to get any of my own words in between hers, but I was ready to listen to Jessica over and over again. Yes, of course, come in. I didn't dare refuse her now, even though I wanted to get to work as soon as possible. Until I get a full-time job, I need to freelance for a living, but not today. Jessica, however, skipped right past me before I could step aside, looking around with her hands folded behind her back as I closed the door. When I found out this apartment was for rent, I was hoping it would go to someone I could talk to. Did they tell you that almost everyone in this building is elderly? She turned around so abruptly that I didn't have time to look up from her bottom, making me look like an idiot. Yes. I've heard something like that. Maybe if I had more intimate experience, I wouldn't act like I've never seen a girl before. It's nice to have a quiet place with neighbors like this, but there's no one to talk to. My husband works in a remote place and comes rarely, and I do not like to go out in public. I've always been a kind of home, and he is jealous of me, and although I like to listen to her voice, but the words about her husband sounded like a thunderclap. It was silly to get myself worked up about something with such a pretty girl, but even those naive fantasies had just been shattered by a glass vase on the stone floor. There must have been some disappointment in my gaze, which Jessica noticed. Is something wrong? You seem a little sad? She acted open and free, as if we were old friends. It is always easier for girls to behave more freely with guys than vice versa. We are shy and do not want to show our eye from the bad side, and they what? A girl is only enough to bend over to forgive her everything. I'm thinking about work. Never mind. Why don't we go to the kitchen? I tried to save face as much as I could, even though the news about Jessica's husband was not very pleasant. I will gladly accept your invitation. Now it was clearer why Jessica is so friendly. She has no choice, or I or with the old men backgammon. She may be married, but I still had the opportunity to enjoy the sight of her figure while she walked ahead of me to the kitchen, a small thing, but nice. Already on the spot, I showed gallantry, made her coffee and sat down at her table, though what good is a diamond if it's someone else's? You mentioned work. Tell me about it. Jessica took the cup with both hands. Feminine lips opened to take a couple of sips. For some reason, even watching her throat quiver as the hot drink flowed down it, I was not weakly aroused. I'm a programmer, roughly speaking. I can write programs if I need to make a design or build a website from scratch. I moved here to get a job with a company that's not far away. It's hard to get there, but if I do well, I'll have a permanent job and a good salary. Some people think it's hard, but if you think about it, it's no harder than driving a car, something like that. Talking about work helped take my mind off the dirty thoughts of my new neighbor, but she didn't seem interested until I looked into those beautiful eyes. Jessica must really be bored if she was looking at me with such an interested gaze. While Jessica was holding the cup, I just now noticed that there was no wedding ring on her finger. Was she lying? I'm sorry. You said you were married, but I don't see your ring. It's one of those rare occasions when you want to hear yourself lied to from such tender lips. Jessica opened her eyes wider and set the cup on the table, rubbing the fingers of her other hand over the spot where her ring should be. I take it off from time to time. I feel like I'm a different person without it. The ring is a symbol of love and fidelity, but my husband isn't around to prove it. There was something mysterious in the notes of her voice, and Jessica's behavior looked like flirting with me. It's hard to believe that such an expressive beauty would want to indulge her ego by flirting with someone like me. However, if she wants to flirt with me, I won't say no. You cheated on your husband? These words came out of my mouth. I don't know what came over me and where I got such courage from. Somehow, I didn't even want to hear the answer to that question. And for two reasons. If Jessica was cheating on her husband, I would feel like a loser, because someone managed to get such a girl into bed and it was not the legal spouse, which is even worse. But on the other hand, if she is faithful to her husband, my role to remain only a spectator. Sorry, it's not nice to ask such a question. I decided to pretend it wasn't a question, but Jessica didn't. Her face lit up with a sly countenance, and her lips opened in utterance. You could even see them glisten from the small amount of drool on them. My husband got a good job. Unfortunately, the downside of such a job is his long absence. He's been gone for over a month, and in that time I haven't made love to anyone, if that's what you're asking. I've already told you that I don't like to leave the house, and there are no young neighbors to cheat on. Jessica laughed briefly, still covering her mouth with her hand, looking me in the eye. Well, or rather, there weren't. Before I could say anything, she continued. Can you give me your number? We're neighbors now. We should always keep in touch with each other, no matter what might happen. Her request looked innocent. Exchange phone numbers. What's the big deal? Good idea. 1 second. My phone's in the room. I got up and went to get the phone. There was no reason not to exchange numbers, and there's no telling what else she might think of. It was probably a game for her, something fun, to play with a new neighbor while her husband was away, nothing serious. I quickly grabbed my phone and went back to the kitchen, only to catch a picture that almost killed me. Jessica was no longer sitting, but bent over the kitchen table, wiggling her hips to the side while she checked something on her phone with her hands. The distance to her wasn't that far, and I couldn't tell if the neighbor had heard me on my return and what this girl was trying to accomplish now. Naked, slender legs without a single hair, and stretched out to me appetizing ass, which was only more tightly squeezed tight shorts. My eyes, as if under hypnosis, followed every movement of her. I couldn't afford the audacity to touch her, after all. No matter how much fun she was having, it would be harassment. Except whether I was a savage or a civilized man, at least not now. Later. I'm back. I gathered my thoughts and tried to hide the excitement in my voice, but Jessica heard me and stood up straight as if on parade, asking an unusual question. I thought you wouldn't be back so soon. Unusual because it didn't take long to pick up the phone, as if she were asking, "Did you watch so fast?" But what's to guess? I watched longer. Who knows where it would have gone? I didn't want to keep such a nice girl waiting. If she was flirting with me, she wouldn't mind a compliment. You're a gentleman. A lot of girls would appreciate that, but, you know, she paused for a moment before continuing. There are some who prefer a guy to be more persistent. Some might call it rude, and though I liked seeing Jessica smile, it was hard to know what was behind it sometimes. I've only known her for a brief moment, but I'm already picking up on the secrets that lurk inside her. She wrote down my number herself when we sat back down at the table and even sent me my first messenger message. The text was simple, the usual. But it looked like another hint from her. Here we go. Now I can pester my new roommate even at night. She giggled sweetly, drinking more of her coffee. I should be getting on with it. Really? Would you mind if I used your restroom? Jessica asked with puppy dog eyes, even though her apartment was a minute's walk away. That said, it was rude to refuse such a small request. Is this another game? I didn't mind, and stayed waiting in the kitchen for her to return. It seemed like Jessica had been gone for a long time, though she returned quickly. Here I am. Walk me out? The girl asked, standing under the archway as we entered the kitchen, and we walked together to the front door. Jessica said goodbye and thanked me for the conversation and coffee, and then let me enjoy the view of her body again as she left. I don't know how lucrative her husband's job is, but it must be the pinnacle of his career if he leaves a wife like that home alone. Even if she were the most faithful flower, I couldn't work, knowing I could make love to her any time I wanted, but she's so far away. With a heavy sigh, I closed the door. There was only one picture in my mind, of Jessica standing bent over in my kitchen. The day seemed to drag on slower than usual, the time around her flying away in an instant, and when she was gone, everything seemed to lose its colors. Today I couldn't do anything about work. All my thoughts were filled with Yulia, so I just rested and sometimes went out to the balcony to get some fresh air. The time was already stretching to 8 p.m. I was not tired, but I wanted to sleep soon and start a new day with a clean slate. There were no more messages from Jessica, so her words about bugging the neighbor even at night were hardly serious. As soon as I set it aside and covered my eyes, a notification came to my phone. Not holding out hope for a message from Jessica, I picked it up and was pleasantly surprised. But it was no ordinary text message. She had sent something. I went into our correspondence and found a disposable image there. It's common practice for apps like this. You can't save it unless you know how, and you can only view it once. And what would that be? Curiosity was tearing me up inside. I immediately opened the message and my eyes widened and my mouth dropped open in surprise. The disposable photo was almost naked, with soft, pleasant skin with the caption, "What do you think?" I know you can't look away from it either, hee. Maybe I'm missing something in this life, but now I closed that image and turned off my phone, staring straight ahead at one point. The truth was obvious, but that didn't make it any easier. Jessica is the kind of girl that even if you try hundreds of women's bodies and someone like her can still get her hands inside you, grab your mind and subjugate it to her beauty, her looks, figure, and character, she was not just a girl but something better. I lay in a kind of desolation. The first girl who evoked such feelings in me, and that one was married, or maybe the fact that she was already a stranger made her so special. I was pulled out of this abyss of strange feelings by a new notification on my phone. With an already tired hand, I picked it up and looked. It was Jessica, new messages from her, this time the text. Hi, hope I'm not distracting you. I just have something going on. I was sending my husband a text, and I thought I accidentally sent you one too. It's personal. Did you see anything weird? Her new message was like a bucket of ice water poured over me and a couple ice cubes added to it. Turns out Jessica was sending this picture to her husband, and it just so happened to have been sent to me. This is possible if my chat with her and her husband were next to each other. This messenger is special, and one message can be sent to several people at once, and disposable materials are not shown as used after they are deleted. I couldn't admit to seeing her half-naked ass. Who knows how that would affect our communication? Hi, it's okay. I'm not busy. And as for your question, Other than this message, and at the very beginning, I haven't seen anything else in the chat room. I'm bad at lying. I wasn't taught it anywhere. But even if Jessica guesses, I'll continue to pretend I didn't see anything. But seeing her now, the image of that athletic uniform will pop up in my mind again and again. Good then. I was already scared. Good night and have a nice sleep. May you dream about something that is hard to forget. I didn't reply to her last message. I didn't even go into it in detail and just tossed the phone aside. Before all this, I didn't really want to sleep, but now it was like I had worked a shift at the factory and my body refused to perform its functions any further. I was hoping for quiet neighbors so that I could pay attention to development, work, and now I am exhausted like a lemon because of one girl with whom I know, from the strength of the total time, about 30 minutes. I'll deal with it tomorrow, but now... Another tired yawn made me realize it was time to fall into the cradle of sleep. I even wonder what awaits me in the new day, the new stage of my life. The end.